and beggars, never shall we die.
This is the story of how a single tornado came within 3 miles of destroying downtown Birmingham, Alabama, and how the 46 minutes it spent on the ground killed 32 people, injured 259 others, and changed how an entire state approaches severe weather coverage. An F5 tornado carved a 30-mile path through western Jefferson County on April 8, 1998, making it the deadliest tornado to strike Alabama in over 2 decades, and the most expensive in the state's history up to that point. The storm would become the defining moment in the career of one of America's most recognized television meteorologists. What happened that night also tells us something about warning systems that actually worked. About 71 people who survived inside a church that was torn apart around them, and about an 8-year-old boy whose death 9 days later would launch a safety movement that continues today. Understanding what unfolded on April 8, 1998, requires starting with what forecasters already knew was coming. A high-risk outlook from the Storm Prediction Center is not something issued lightly, and the designation is reserved for days when atmospheric conditions align in ways that virtually guarantee violent weather. Central Alabama sat under that high-risk designation on April 8, 1998, and the forecasters had good reason for concern. Tornado Watch number 194 went out at 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time, but this was not an ordinary watch. The designation attached to it would have caught the attention of anyone who understood severe weather terminology, the phrase dangerous situation. A PDS watch signals that forecasters expect multiple tornadoes, with some potentially violent and long-tracked, and it amounts to the Weather Service's way of communicating that this is not a drill. The atmospheric setup that day read like a textbook for severe weather. Winds exceeding 120 knots screamed through the upper-level jet stream overhead. CAPE, which measures how much fuel the atmosphere has available for storms, climbed from 1,300 joules per kilogram at 6 p.m. to 2,370 joules per kilogram by midnight. Storm relative helicity jumped from 55 to 220 meters squared per second squared. These numbers did not just suggest violent tornadoes were possible. They indicated such storms were likely. A high precipitation supercell formed along the Mississippi and Alabama border around 6 p.m. and began tracking northeast. The National Weather Service in Birmingham issued its first tornado warning for Pickens County at 6:26 p.m., and at 7:01 p.m., the supercell's first tornado touched down. That initial tornado earned an F3 rating with winds between 158 and 206 miles per hour, and it stayed on the ground for 17.4 miles across Pickens and Tuscaloosa counties before lifting at 7:29 p.m. An F3 tornado that remains on the ground for over 17 miles would normally dominate headlines, but this supercell had more to produce. A new tornado touched down at 7:42 p.m., approximately 1.5 miles east of the Warrior River in eastern Tuscaloosa County. At first, it appeared weak, rated F0 at the lowest category, but something changed as it moved east-northeast toward Jefferson County. The tornado encountered what meteorologists call a stray outflow boundary, and that is when it began to intensify rapidly. The National Weather Service issued a tornado warning for Jefferson County at 7:45 p.m. Between 7:50 and 7:52 p.m., the tornado crossed the county line. What had started as an F0 tornado was transforming into a monster. Oak Grove sits in western Jefferson County, a collection of neighborhoods, schools, and small-town life that existed quietly in the shadow of Birmingham to the east. At around 7:55 p.m., the tornado arrived. 3 people died immediately when a mobile home completely disintegrated, and all 4 occupants were thrown across the street. Only one of them survived. The tornado moved through Oak Grove and struck the local high school, destroying the building. But here, something happened that survivors would later call a miracle. 25 cheerleaders had been practicing in the gymnasium when they realized the tornado was approaching, and all 25 dove into the school lobby. The support beams above them bent from the center and created a protective pocket that shielded them from debris raining down. When they emerged, 3 feet of metal lockers, concrete blocks, and bleachers covered the gymnasium floor. All 25 escaped without serious injury. Oak Grove Elementary School was destroyed as well. The damage was so complete that one teacher's gradebook later turned up in Pell City, more than 30 miles away. And yet Coach McKinney's gradebook remained sitting open on the gymnasium floor, still turned to 5th period, completely undisturbed despite the devastation surrounding it. That contrast illustrates the capricious nature of tornadoes. Oak Grove was just the beginning. The tornado continued northeast and reached F5 intensity for the first time in the Concord and Rock Creek areas, where winds exceeded 260 miles per hour. The Central Concord Volunteer Fire Station was completely destroyed. Rock Creek experienced catastrophic destruction. Homes were not just damaged in Rock Creek, they were swept away entirely. Vehicles were lifted and carried. One car ended up deposited on top of a destroyed gas station. 11 people died in Rock Creek alone, making it the deadliest single area along the tornado's path. Rock Creek Church of God had its Family Life Center roof torn off by the tornado, and cars in the parking lot were thrown into a ravine 50 feet deep. Even as the tornado moved on, that damaged building was pressed into service as a makeshift trauma center to treat the injured. In disaster, communities improvise. The tornado was now approximately half a mile wide, with some sources suggesting it may have reached 3/4 of a mile, and it traveled east-northeast at highway speeds. Pinedale Estates, McGregor Estates, and Rockwood sustained F4 to F5 damage. 4 more people died in Sylvan Springs. 2 more died in Wylam Heights. And then the tornado reached Edgewater. F5 strength returned as the tornado struck Edgewater, a community in western Birmingham, and 9 people died there. That made it the second highest death toll of any single area along the path. John Oldshoe arrived at the scene as one of the first responders. The weekend meteorologist and storm chaser for ABC 3340 had been tracking the tornado in the station's weather van, and what he found in Edgewater would stay with him for the rest of his career. He said he had never seen anything like it, and he had never been in a major tornado. Something seemed wrong as he surveyed the destruction in the darkness. The landscape appeared lighter than it should have been, and it took him a moment to understand why. The F5 tornado had been so powerful that it stripped the bark from pine trees throughout the area. A full moon was out that night, and its light reflected off the exposed white bark of thousands of debarked trees. He remembered thinking that something did not seem right, that it seemed lighter than it should be. Then he found the homes, or what remained of them. He said those were places where people may have died. He did not know what he was going to do. It kind of freaked him out, and he got back in the weather van and had to hyperventilate for a second. Wesley Sterling lived in Edgewater at 20 years old when the tornado struck. He said Edgewater was never going to be the same. There was nothing left. 71 people gathered at Open Door Baptist Church in McDonald Chapel for Wednesday night prayer service, and neither Pastor Rick Cooper nor his congregation had any way of knowing that an F5 tornado was minutes away. Pastor Cooper later described the sequence. He said they had been there about 4 or 5 minutes, had just gone downstairs and sat down, and then heard the men come in and say it was here. By the time they came through the door, it hit. All 71 people moved to a hallway, and what happened next would become one of the most remarkable survival stories of the entire event. The roar was deafening, according to Cooper. He compared it to being inside a jet engine. The tornado tore the roof off the church and threw cars from the parking lot into a 50-foot ravine. The building was devastated. 2 people in McDonald Chapel died that night, but none of them were inside Open Door Baptist Church. all 71 survived. Cooper recalled crawling out the window and looking back at the devastated building. He described saying it was a miracle, and hearing the Lord respond that it was only the start of a miracle. Linda Myers, a church member, reflected that they know God is with them during the storm, in the storm, and out of the storm, before the storm. He is with them all the time. Open Door Baptist Church held its Easter sunrise service in the parking lot 4 days later, surrounded by rubble. The tornado continued northeast from McDonald Chapel and claimed one more life in West Inslee, the last fatality along the path. Apartment roofs were removed in Sandusky, and homes were destroyed in North Pratt. At approximately 8:28 p.m., 46 minutes after it first touched down in Tuscaloosa County, the tornado dissipated in Pratt City. The path stretched 30.3 miles according to some records, 30.6 according to others. Either measurement tells the same story. The tornado had carved destruction through some of the most populated areas of western Jefferson County, and it came terrifyingly close to continuing into Birmingham's heart. James Spann, the chief meteorologist for ABC 3340, who had been broadcasting continuously since the tornado warnings began, reflected on what could have happened. His assessment was chilling. He said if this would not have lifted around Pratt City, this would have come through areas in downtown Birmingham, just north of Interstate 59 and Interstate 20. It would have hit the BJCC, and it would have taken out the Birmingham airport. The tornado dissipated just northwest of the junction of Interstates 20, 59, and 65. 2 or 3 more miles would have put it into downtown Birmingham's high-rises. 4 more miles would have sent it directly over Birmingham International Airport. The supercell that spawned this tornado was not finished. At 8:56 p.m., it dropped another tornado in St. Clair County, east of Birmingham. That tornado was rated F2, and it tracked 14.4 miles on the ground. 2 more people died. 3 tornadoes came from that supercell across Alabama by the time the night ended. The middle one, the F5 that struck Oak Grove, Rock Creek, Edgewater, McDonald Chapel, and Pratt City, killed 32 people, injured more than 250, and caused $202.83 million in damage. Adjusted for inflation, that amounts to approximately $390 to $400 million in 2025 dollars. Alabama had never seen a more expensive tornado up to that point. Something else was happening in Birmingham while the tornado was on the ground. Something that would reshape how the entire state approaches severe weather coverage. James Spann had served as chief meteorologist at ABC 3340 since 1996. He was experienced and respected, and on the night of April 8, 1998, he had something he had never possessed in his entire career: the green light. His explanation captured what that meant. He knew going into the day that this could be the night that just might put them on the map. He had the green light. He had never had the green light in his entire career. By green light, he meant he had the full right to go on the air and stay on the air as long as he thought it was necessary to protect life. Stay on the air he did, a BC 3340 broadcast, continuously without commercial breaks for more than 5 hours. Spann tracked the tornado from touchdown to dissipation, providing real-time updates to viewers across central Alabama. The station did not end its continuous coverage until around midnight. Wall-to-wall coverage during tornado warnings, with meteorologists staying on air for hours at a time, had not been standard practice in Birmingham television before that night. After April 8, 1998, it became the expectation. Spann recognized the shift. He said he knew this long-form coverage would set the standard and change everything for the market, and he was glad that it did. The night of April 8, 1998, transformed him personally. He later reflected that that night was the defining moment of his career. station coverage that night extended beyond meteorology. Bill Castle, the chief photographer for ABC 3340, arrived at the scene in Edgewater and found a situation that demanded more than journalism. He and others at the station helped load victims into news vehicles, using them as makeshift ambulances when the official emergency response was overwhelmed. One of the most important aspects of the 1998 Oak Grove-Birmingham tornado concerns what it reveals about tornado warning systems. April 8, 1998, stands apart from many tornado disasters that expose failures in forecasting or public alert systems, because on this night, the warnings largely worked. The rare high-risk outlook came from the Storm Prediction Center. The National Weather Service designated the tornado watch as a particularly dangerous situation. Warnings went out for Jefferson County 7 minutes before the tornado entered the county. Across all 3 tornadoes that night, average warning lead time reached 13 minutes, with some areas receiving up to 34 minutes of warning. The Natural Hazard Center at the University of Colorado examined the warning response and found remarkable levels of public awareness. Television delivered tornado warnings to 85% of survivors. Awareness of the tornado watch. Before the tornado struck, reached 86%. The study concluded that this event was well forecast and the warning system performed to near maximum capability. But if the warnings worked, why did 32 people still die? Factors that no warning system can fully address provide the answer. The study found that many fatalities occurred in older company housing from the 1930s, homes built during the mining era with substandard construction. These shotgun and hall and parlor-style homes featured unanchored pier and beam foundations, exposed eaves, and thin pine stud framing. Only 19% of surveyed homes had any foundation anchoring. The researchers observed that the poor remain at highest risk due to factors related to cultural architecture, education, shelter availability, and community infrastructure. Very few survivors reported having access to NOAA weather radio receivers, according to another finding from the study. Topography and atmospheric conditions created problems with reception, and the study recommended major improvements to the weather radio system. One demographic statistic stood out as unusual. Only 3 of the 32 fatalities, about 9%, occurred in mobile homes. That percentage was remarkably low for a violent tornado. Just 2 months earlier, a tornado outbreak in Florida had killed 42 people, prompting that state to implement new manufactured housing requirements in 1999. Jefferson County Emergency Management Agency declared a full-scale emergency at 8:55 p.m. while the tornado was still on the ground. By sunrise on April 9th, the scope of destruction was becoming clear. The American Red Cross Damage Survey revealed devastating numbers. 608 homes were destroyed outright. Another 556 had major damage exceeding 50% of the structure, and 810 more had minor damage. The total came to 1,974 affected homes, and 1,164 families were left with homes that were completely unlivable. 5,000 acres of timber were destroyed outside residential areas, with 4,000 of those acres in Jefferson County and 1,000 in Tuscaloosa County. 2 of the 3 Concord Fire Department stations were destroyed. The Oak Grove Fire Station sustained severe damage. Vice President Al Gore toured the damage by helicopter on April 10th, accompanied by his wife Tipper, who spent time consoling survivors. The vice president's assessment was stark. He called it the worst damage he had ever seen. Sheriff Jim Woodward of Jefferson County offered a sobering observation about the nature of what had occurred. He said, "There is really no place to hide from something like this." President Bill Clinton visited McDonald Chapel on April 15th after declaring a federal disaster and mobilizing FEMA and other federal agencies to assist with recovery. FEMA Director James Lee Witt toured both Alabama and Georgia as part of the response. The tornado was part of a larger outbreak that killed 41 people in total, with 34 in Alabama and 7 in Georgia. Life in the damaged areas had been upended in an instant. Crystal Snow was a senior at Oak Grove High School, and with her school destroyed, she faced an uncertain future. Her frustration was evident. She said, "I don't think it's fair. Now I can't graduate because we don't have a school." Nathan Seals was an 8-year-old student at North Highland Elementary School in Hueytown who loved playing baseball. When the tornado struck, Nathan and his family were caught in its path. He survived the initial impact, but suffered severe head trauma. Matthew Seals, Nathan's father, described the moment. "I looked up and I could see the sky and wind and rain. Then I could feel the floor buckle and felt us lift up. And I just thought then, this is it. We're gone." For 9 days, Nathan fought for his life at Children's Hospital of Alabama. Around April 17th, he became the last person to die from the tornado. Matthew Seals was left paralyzed from the waist down from his own injuries, and his son's death devastated the family. But the tragedy also revealed something important. Doctors determined that Nathan likely would have survived if he had been wearing a helmet during the tornado. James Spann attended Nathan's funeral, and it became the hardest storm-related funeral he has ever attended. Out of all of the funerals, storm-related funerals that he had seen, that was so hard. You had the casket, and you had the family brought in by paramedics because of their wounds, but they wanted to be there for the funeral of their son and their brother. Grief transformed into action for Matthew Seals in the years since. Despite being paralyzed, he now travels to schools across Alabama speaking about tornado safety and the importance of wearing helmets during severe weather. His work is about safety and hope. His words about Nathan carried both memory and mission. He loved playing baseball. He really did. He loved playing baseball. "I want to save as many kids as I can from something that could happen." Nathan's death helped launch what became known as the helmet safety movement for tornadoes. Public awareness campaigns were developed by UAB Injury Control Research Center and the Alabama Head Injury Foundation. Official tornado safety guidance from the Alabama Cooperative Extension System now includes helmet recommendations. James Spann became one of the most prominent advocates for helmet use during tornadoes. Tragic validation of this safety message came 13 years later. During the April 27, 2011 tornado outbreak, the deadliest in Alabama history, 11 of the 21 Jefferson County fatalities resulted from head and neck injuries. The research confirmed what Nathan Seals' father had been saying all along: helmets can save lives. One of the most haunting aspects of the 1998 tornado's path involves the fact that it followed routes that had been devastated before. A violent tornado killed 25 people in McDonald Chapel and Pratt City. In 1956, many of the same neighborhoods struck in 1998. An F5 tornado killed 22 people in northern Jefferson County in 1977. The April 8, 1998 tornado's path crossed through areas that had experienced violent tornadoes within living memory. History repeated again on April 27, 2011, when an EF4 tornado tracked through a similar area and killed 64 people in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. That tornado, along with the EF5 tornado that struck Hackleburg and Phil Campbell the same day, killing 72 people, surpassed the 1998 Oak Grove-Birmingham tornado as the deadliest in modern Alabama history. The 1998 tornado now ranks as the third deadliest modern Alabama tornado, behind only the two devastating storms of April 27, 2011. An eerie historical footnote deserves mention. In July 1997, just 9 months before the tornado, approximately 80 Jefferson County Emergency Management Agency personnel attended FEMA training in Maryland. The training exercise scenario they worked through was hypothetical: multiple tornadoes hitting Birmingham and causing 35 deaths. The actual tornado killed 32. Communities struck by the tornado on April 8, 1998 have rebuilt. Oak Grove High School was reconstructed approximately 1 mile from its original site, and a memorial tree and a painting now stand at the school honoring the victims. The painting carries the message, "We rise up to the strength within," with an aerial view of tornado devastation in the background. Open Door Baptist Church was rebuilt as well. The congregation that sheltered in that hallway, all 71 of them, continued to worship together. Those original survivors gathered at the rebuilt church for a remembrance event at the 25th anniversary of the tornado in 2023. Student government members read the names of all 32 victims at the 20th anniversary commemoration held at Oak Grove High School on April 6, 2018. The Oak Grove Choir and Band performed Amazing Grace. A historic artifact gallery displayed items from the tornado. School principal Alan Pruden and Jefferson County Superintendent Dr. Craig Pouncey attended the ceremony. Extensive local media coverage and retrospective interviews with survivors marked the 25th anniversary in 2023. Diane Kalma survived the tornado and shared a memory that speaks to the lasting psychological impact. When you come across and you find bodies that have been thrown into your belongings and your yard, it is etched in our minds, the things that we saw that will never go away. One more story from April 8, 1998, illustrates how much attitudes toward tornado warnings have changed. A Birmingham Barons baseball game was underway at Hoover Metropolitan Stadium that evening, while the F5 tornado approached Birmingham. Tornado sirens were sounding, and warnings were being broadcast on every television station in the city. The umpires refused to postpone the game. Play continued until rain made it physically impossible to continue. The tornado passed close enough to the stadium that the decision to keep playing seems almost incomprehensible in retrospect. Response came just 1 month later. The Birmingham Barons had implemented a formal tornado policy by May 9, 1998. When another tornado warning was issued that day, 7,000 fans were evacuated from the stadium. April 8, 1998, had changed everything. 46 minutes passed from touchdown to dissipation for the 1998 Oak Grove-Birmingham F5 tornado. In that span of time, it killed 32 people, injured 259, destroyed or damaged nearly 2,000 homes, and caused over $200 million in damage. The tornado came within 3 miles of downtown Birmingham and within 4 miles of the airport. A bit more distance traveled, and the death toll could have been catastrophic. This tornado also tells us a story about what went right. Warnings worked. The Storm Prediction Center identified the threat. The National Weather Service issued timely alerts. Television meteorologists like James Spann stayed on the air for hours, providing real-time information that allowed people to take shelter. 85% of survivors received warnings via television. 71 people in a church survived because they had enough time to move to a hallway. 25 cheerleaders in a gymnasium survived because they reached a lobby before the tornado arrived. The standard for severe weather television coverage in Alabama was established on April 8, 1998, with the wall-to-wall, commercial-free coverage that viewers now expect when tornadoes threaten. The importance of public warning systems was validated, while vulnerabilities that still exist for people living in older, poorly constructed housing were exposed. A safety movement launched by the death of an 8-year-old boy named Nathan Seals continues to save lives today. James Spann reflected on what had changed at the 25th anniversary commemoration, saying he knew after this happened that what they did with that long-form coverage would set the standard and change everything for this market, and he was glad that it did. The tornado left its mark on the land, on the communities it struck, and on the people who survived it. The mark it left on how Alabama responds to severe weather has undoubtedly saved lives in the years since. Tornadoes will continue to strike Alabama, and that much remains certain. But people in their path now have a better chance of surviving because of what was learned on April 8, 1998.